how did this experience change his life?
Oh, well, yes. Actually, as a psychiatrist, that's the most important part to me of this experience, that it changes people's lives. And I've talked to people in their 80s and 90s who had the experience as teenagers and said, I've never been the same. They almost always say that they are no longer afraid of death, that no matter what they experience in the NDE, they realize that it's not something to be afraid of. Now, they also say that when I first heard about this as a psychiatrist, I was worried, is this going to make people more suicidal?
Because they
You
want to
know,
go
that you're
back to that special place, right?
right, right. So I did a study then. I interviewed people who came to the hospital with a suicide attempt, and I compared those who had a near death experience as a result of the suicide attempt with those who didn't. And what I found was that those who had a near death experience were much less suicidal than those who didn't have a near death experience. And when I asked them why, they said, well, I now realize that everything that happens in life has a meaning and a purpose. So the reasons that made me want to kill myself, I now know they're not things to run away from. They're things I'm supposed to learn from and grow from. They also said that if you're not afraid of dying, you're also not afraid of living. You can go ahead and take risks and enjoy life to the fullest, because what's the worst that happens? You die. So they end up having a much more joyful life than they had before. They also say that they're much more spiritual than they were before the NDE. And I've heard this from people who are religious and from people who were atheists before the NDE. They still may not believe in a God, but they believe there is some part of them that survives bodily death. Now, when they say they're spiritual, they don't mean they're more religious. In fact, they often become less devoted to any particular religion, but they feel more connected to other people, to nature, to the universe, to the divine. And this sense of connection makes them feel like they're part of something much greater than themselves. Um, Now, that leads them to basically the golden rule, which is part of every religion we have: do unto others as you have them do unto you. For most of us, that's a guideline we're supposed to follow. But for the near-death experiencer, they experience it as a law of the universe, that when you hurt someone else, you hurt yourself too. I've heard it compared to a hand. If you look at the fingers, they look like they're separate things. But if you look at the whole hand, you see they're really connected at the bottom. And you can't cut one without hurting the whole hand.
Whew. You dropped some wisdom on me right there. Especially the part where people say that they weren't afraid of death, they were afraid to live, or something along those lines. Could you repeat that part?
Right? If you're not afraid of dying, then you're also not afraid of living.
Exactly. All right.
And people who
So
have this experience
yeah.
tend to be much more engaged in life, much more outgoing, and much more caring about other people. They become much more altruistic. They do more volunteer things. Now, this can cause a lot of problems. If you can imagine one person in a family having a religious conversion and the rest of the family not, that can cause a lot of problems in the family. In addition, people sometimes can't reconcile these new attitudes with their careers beforehand. Example, I've known people who were career military officers or police officers who, after a near-death experience, could not shoot, even in self-defense. They could not hurt someone else. And they had to change their careers.
Wow.
They often go into some helping profession, healthcare, clergy, social work, teaching, something like this. I've also known people who were in very competitive businesses who came back saying it no longer makes sense to get ahead at someone else's expense. So they end up either changing the way they do their work or leaving the field entirely and going to some other profession.
Fascinating. So it's even though NDEs are traumatic and scary, they're actually a blessing in disguise, because what you're describing is that these people then lead better lives. So it's kind of not fair that most of us will not experience an NDE. Uh, I'm turning it around and making it really egoistical and all about
Well,
me. Why am I not going
yes,
to experience an NDE?
that
But
doesn't mean we can't learn from what the near death experiences tell us.
right, right. Hey, thank you for listening. First and foremost, a massive, massive thank you to my producers, Lorenzo, Jurechuk, Carmen, Veronica, Mila, and Taichi. You legends rock. Without you, this podcast would not have been possible at all. Thank you so much. For the rest of you, if you enjoyed listening to the episode, please follow and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And of course, if you'd like to become a patron as well, go to Patreon, type Smart Cookies in there, and become one. All right. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.